The ultimate gaming experience is here, or at least that's what Razer wants us to think of their new Android gaming handheld device, the Razer Edge. It's touting some killer specs like a custom-designed Snapdragon chipset, an AMOLED screen with a 144Hz refresh rate, paired with the new Razer Kishi V2 Pro controller attachment for gaming on the go. I've been using the Razer Edge for the last month, and I have quite a bit to say about Razer's ultimate gaming portable handheld. If you wanted to know everything you need to know about the Razer Edge, or were considering getting one, we're going to take a deep dive into Razer Edge's hardware, software, and gaming performance to see if its price and performance make it that ultimate gaming handheld that Razer promises. So get subscribed and let's get right to it. Before we get to the device unboxing, my pre-order came with this thing called the Leap Pack. It's got some pretty lame stuff, to be honest. A dog tag, some stickers, a door hanger, a keychain that says remove before fight, and a coaster. This looks like crap you get for free at a convention and then throw out later. The device unboxing is pretty nice though. The Edge is wrapped in plastic, giving you some quick instructions to get started right away. Below the device is an instruction manual, which includes a sticker. Then we have a USB-C cable along with the Kishi controller attachment. The Kishi V2 Pro is the USB-C controller attachment, which will actually work on any USB-C capable Android device. The V2 Pro is currently only available with the Edge, but Razer did say it will be released as a standalone attachment in the future. Spec-wise, it's got a 6.8-inch, 144Hz AMOLED touchscreen with a resolution of 2400 by 1080. It's got a Snapdragon G3X Gen 1 chip, which Razer has said was created specifically for the Edge. The Edge features 8GB of LPDDR5 RAM, a 5000 mAh battery, 128GB of internal memory, Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, and runs Android 12. The Razer Edge Wi-Fi is available for $399, while the Edge with 5G is available through Verizon at $599. And that's what was advertised before the Edge was shipped out. It turns out that the Wi-Fi model actually only has 6GB of RAM, and the custom-designed Snapdragon that was promised is actually a Snapdragon 888 with active cooling. There was apparently some sort of misunderstanding and a mistake by the marketing team of Razer. This is a pretty huge miss and sent the internet in an uproar. It wasn't long before Razer issued an apology and provided pre-order customers with a measly $25 voucher. It definitely reduces some immediate value from its already fairly high price of $400, but now it's $400 with only 6GB of RAM. Razer said that the extra RAM was to handle the 5G capabilities, but I'm not sure if I'm buying that. The Razer Edge device itself is actually super sleek. It feels premium and has some heft to it in a good way. The front has an insanely rich AMOLED screen with super rounded corners. The Android home screen title bar feels a bit odd since the clock and battery icons are nearly cut off, but when games take the full screen, it looks fantastic. There's no visible branding on the front, which makes the device look even better. At the top of the screen, we have a front-facing camera. I'm not sure why you need a front-facing camera at all, but it's there, with image quality that actually isn't too bad. The back of the device is flat with some slots for the active cooling. At the top of the Edge, we've got the volume up, volume down, and power buttons. This button positioning really isn't great though. The volume up and volume down function more like a vertical device than horizontal, so the right button is volume down and the left button is volume up. At the bottom of the device, we've got a SIM card slot, even for the Wi-Fi model. This is actually where the micro SD card goes, which is a bit of a weird engineering decision. You can't easily get to the card slot unless you have a SIM card removal tool, which is not included with this device. My iFixit kit has something that fits perfectly, so I'll be using that. But really, is everyone supposed to just have a SIM card removal tool laying around? Moving over to the Kishi V2 Pro USB-C controller, it is one of the best controllers I've used on a portable device. The ABXY buttons have super clicky micro switches that feel awesome to press. The D-pad feels super high quality and is also very clicky. Every button press feels precise and accurate. The analog sticks are Switch style, but feel good and do feel like they have a full range of motion. The positioning of the start and select are a bit awkward. The start is at the bottom right, and the select is underneath the left analog stick. This is to make room for a quick shortcut to the Nexus launcher, and a shortcut to quickly record the screen. At the top of the controller we have stacked triggers, analog R2 and L2 buttons, and programmable switches beside the triggers. The controller also features haptic feedback, pass-through USB-C charging, and a pass-through 3.5mm headphone port. Connecting the Kishi to the Edge is pretty seamless. You just need to set the device on the left side of the Kishi first, then pull the controller apart and plug it into the right side with the USB-C port of the Edge. The Kishi attachment with the Edge doesn't make the device super heavy, but it does make it pretty wide. Because of this, I've been having a hard time figuring out how to bring the Razer Edge around with me on the go. The device alone isn't quite pocket friendly, and it certainly won't be pocketable with the Kishi attached. I found that Switch Lite cases fit the Edge device itself, but does have a ton of extra room, and there's not quite enough room in that Switch Lite case to hold also the Kishi controller. Even slightly oversized Switch cases are a really tight fit, so I'm a bit concerned about too much pressure on the analog sticks or triggers. For now, I've been keeping the Edge in a Switch Lite case, and then throwing the Kishi in the front pocket of my backpack. It's definitely less than ideal, and I wish Razer had a case to go along with the Edge. That would have been a really nice thing to apply that $25 credit to, but until then, it is a bit of a hassle to bring this thing around. Size-wise, let's compare it to a few popular devices. The Switch, Switch Lite, Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, the Ein Odin, a Game Boy, and a Steam Deck. Booting up the device for the first time, we have a semi-customized setup. I chose to skip Wi-Fi setup just to get into the device faster. From the initial setup, you are taken to a stock Android home screen with Google Apps and Razer apps pre-installed. There is also this Razer branded background by default. Before setting up the device any further, the first thing that I did was I went to put in a new micro SD card so I can load this thing up with games and tons of ROMs. Removing the SIM card tray to get to the micro SD card is easy enough, but actually getting your micro SD card into the tray is another story. It doesn't just sit there, you have to kind of press on it, and you have to get the direction correct. I just had a hard time figuring it out. Once I got it right the first time, I never had a problem again. Once you do get the micro SD card into the device, you have to choose to format it for portable storage because that's the only option you even have. And this is perhaps the biggest miss of all, is that the micro SD card will only work when formatted for a FAT32. This means that the maximum file size that you can store on this micro SD card is 4 GB. This completely nerfs the expansibility possibilities of this device. Usually, Android devices will also let you format a micro SD card for expanded internal storage, but that's not an option on the Razer Edge. The OS doesn't seem to have too much bloatware, but the fact that there is bloatware at all is a little bit of a letdown. It comes preloaded with the Nexus app and the Cortex Games app. The Cortex Games app is what seems like weird bloatware. It tries to add achievements, but I find it annoying and very pushy for you to install games like Candy Crush. The Nexus app is actually great that they've included it, as it's a launcher that can be used alongside the Kishi. It's also where you'll find the ability to upgrade the Kishi firmware when there are updates available. When the Razer Edge launched, the Nexus app was actually an outdated version, but in the last few weeks, there was an update that had massively improved using the Kishi with the Edge. When launching certain apps through the Nexus app, you have the option to launch with button mapping or launch with controller support. Games like Diablo have built-in controller support, and seem to have been built with the Kishi in mind. Other games are seemingly missing controller support, or require funky workarounds, which is where the Nexus button mapping software comes in handy. There are a few extra steps to get the button mapping enabled, and sometimes it is a bit finicky where I just have to end up rebooting the device if things aren't working 100%, but once you do get it working, it functions really well. I mostly use the button mapping feature for Call of Duty Mobile. It takes a few minutes to get used to what buttons you want to map where, but once you do that, you're good to go. When it comes to emulation, the Nexus app can show you your emulation apps in the launcher, but I ended up preferring to just use Daijisho wherever I could. The biggest benefit of the Daijisho launcher in this case is that it supports adding games from multiple locations so that you can launch your microSD card game files and your larger game files from the internal storage seamlessly from one location. Gaming on the Razer Edge is the closest I've seen to plug and play. This is especially true for game streaming, and mostly true for Android gaming. There are lots of games that do support controllers out of the box. Others require minimal setup like screen button mapping for Call of Duty Mobile, or controller mapping for emulators. But after you set that up, games and emulators require little to no tweaking. This is mostly because this device is a complete powerhouse. It handles mostly anything you throw at it. Starting with some game streaming, Game Pass is a really great experience on the Edge. My only complaint is that the Edge has a 20:9 aspect ratio, which is non-standard. So while Android games will make the most of your screen space, something like Xbox Game Pass will leave pretty sizable black bars on the left and right of the screen. If you have a decent gaming laptop or PC, local streaming apps like Steam Link or Moonlight are great ways to take advantage of that 20:9 aspect ratio and 144Hz refresh rate, as long as your internet can handle it. I had to fiddle with some settings on my PC to take advantage of the full screen of the Edge, but once I did, the game looked great. I've recently been playing around with Android ports. You can now pretty easily get Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, and Portal running on Android. I was only able to get Half-Life 1 to work on an older app, so it doesn't take up the Edge's full screen, but Half-Life 2 and Portal do take full advantage of the screen's resolution and look fantastic. Okay, so we've looked at the official capabilities of this device, but we all know that this thing has the potential for some awesome emulation, and it definitely does not disappoint on that front. Classic emulation is absolutely no problem on this device. PS1, N64, and Dreamcast can be upscaled like crazy, widescreen patches enabled, and even throw in some custom texture packs and have no issues whatsoever. N64 emulation on the Edge is some of the best I've seen on Android. This is because widescreen hacks extend beyond the standard 16:9 aspect ratio and take up the entirety of the Razer Edge's screen. It was so easy to get lost in N64 games because of this. Super Nintendo widescreen hacks are also a ton of fun here because you can play Super Mario World in extra widescreen mode. Getting right into the higher end systems, GameCube is an awesome experience. Paired with the analog triggers on the Kishi and the power of the Edge, games run no problem here. For the most part, you can just bump up that resolution to at least 720p and get right into gaming. Harder to run games like Rogue Squadron 2 still won't play at full speed, but there are moments where it feels like it can almost get to full speed, which is the best I've seen on a dedicated Android gaming device so far. Wii performance is just about the same as GameCube. PlayStation 2 is another great out-of-the-box experience. You can bump these games up to 2x and in some cases 2.5 or 3x with widescreen patches enabled. Not every game will work. There will definitely be some outliers or games that may not run with the widescreen patches or increased resolution, but you'll be able to easily get a good portion of the PS2 library up and running. PSP is not a difficult system to emulate anymore. We're seeing budget devices play PSP no problem, but I think it's a really fun system to play on the Razer Edge because of the wider screen. Gameplay is perfect on the Edge. I was able to play Burnout at a 6x resolution. It's overkill, but it speaks to the performance capability of this device. Nintendo DS and 3DS really shine on the Edge because of how wide the screen is, being able to fit both the main screen and the touch screen side by side. We're finally in the realm of a powerful device where Switch emulation with the Skyline emulator is actually surprisingly good. Compatibility overall is quite low because Skyline is still in such early development, but the fact that it can boot some games or even get into some gameplay is such a great sign. There is the Egg NS emulator, but to be honest, it's really quite sketchy, and despite it sometimes having better performance, it's definitely super sketchy because it requires a subscription to even use the Kishi controller with it. While Egg NS appears to have better compatibility with games, because Skyline is updated so often, sometimes several times in a single day, I'm pretty confident that Skyline will soon surpass the compatibility of Egg NS, and it's all in an open source free-to-use emulator with no ads. Lastly, as a little extra, since the PS Vita emulator Vita 3K was just released for Android recently, I wanted to take a look at how the Razer Edge runs PS Vita games. Of course, because this is in such early development, I imagine the app will continue to be updated and provide additional performance enhancements, but for now, I did find game performance pretty poor with low support. The best I could get was Uncharted, booted, and playing. It's actually not bad. There are definitely some graphical glitches, but as far as the first public release of the emulator playing on the Edge, I think it's pretty impressive. So far, I've really only had a few negative things to say about the Razer Edge, and for a good reason. It is without a doubt a solid device. The tablet is sleek and well designed, the performance is fantastic, and the Kishi controller is incredibly comfortable to use. But there are still a few big things to address here. The Edge being a standalone device requiring the controller attachment is a huge downside. The biggest draw to these devices for me is the fact that the controller and the device are all in one. The other is the price to value. At $399, the Razer Edge is the same price as the base model Steam Deck. The Steam Deck offers better emulation performance and it's already got a massive gaming library because it's running PC games. If you're looking for a dedicated game streaming device, there's also the Logitech G Cloud handheld. Similar to the Edge, it's a dedicated Android handheld, but it's actually got some great things going for it. At $350, I do think it's a little bit overpriced, but it's got a great screen and the aspect ratio is perfect for Xbox game streaming without any pillar boxing. It's definitely not nearly as powerful as the Edge for emulation, but the all-in-one controller plus device is a great experience. You can often find the G Cloud on sale. Right now, it's on sale on Amazon for $300. One last comparable device is the Ein Odin. It's got analog triggers like these other devices, runs Android, and it's even a bit more powerful than the Logitech G Cloud. It's available for $279, it's a great Xbox Game Pass companion, and has pretty decent emulation performance. Even though I do think the Razer Edge is a device with some great hardware and gaming performance, we do need to take a step back and ask if those features make this the ultimate handheld that Razer promised. Because of its high price tag, I do think the Steam Deck, Logitech G Cloud, or the Ein Odin are definitely worth considering instead. Each of these devices definitely have their positives and negatives, but I find it hard to see where the Razer Edge fits in here. As always, this is just my opinion from my personal experiences with these devices. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think of the Razer Edge? Do you think the Steam Deck, G Cloud, or Ein Odin are better options? If you like talking about these portable gaming devices, I just recently started streaming over on Twitch. In the last stream, we unboxed the One X Player 2, which was fun to mess around with together. I've got tons of emulation devices to unbox and play around with, so come check it out. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.